Hello, in this Wheelbarrow Series class, we're going to talk about how to grow figs in Kentucky. A little history of the fig. It's Ficus carica, originated in northern Asia. Sumerian stone tablets record the usage of the figs back 2500 BC, and remnants have been found in excavations as far back as 5000 BC. Spanish missionaries brought them to the U.S. in 1520, and the black mission fig named after a California Franciscan mission that dates back to 1770. The fig is mentioned in the Bible prominently. Jesus cursed the fig tree for not bearing fruit, and it withered and died. That is in Matthew 21:18. Jewish king Hezekiah used fig leaves to help cure an infection, and James used the metaphor of fig leaves to show how Christians should live their lives. The early church also used fig leaves as covering for statues, and you can still see some of those statues, especially in Rome today. Scholars believe the forbidden fruit was actually a fig rather than an apple as well. In Greek mythology, the fig had the blessing of sanctity of the Greek gods, and Plato documented that figs were fed to the athletes at Olympia to increase their running speeds. Figs are 50% sugar, so in essence they were the candy bars of the day. As far as nutrition, figs contain potassium, fiber, omega-3 and 6, calcium and iron, etc. Figs contain pectin, which is beneficial to the digestive system. It helps clear cholesterol as well. And figs are said to help hypertension, boost brain function, treat anemia, help a sore throat, and help strengthen vision. And I say they are 100% tasty. Figs are in the family Moraceae. Common name is fig in English, higo in Spanish, or ego, I guess you would say that. Figu in French, and I will not even try the German, or maybe a fico in Italian. Distant relatives to the mulberry, and you can kind of tell that they're a little kin to the mulberry, or you can at least see the resemblance in the leaves and leaf shape of the fig leaf and the mulberry, especially the one version of the mulberry leaf. You know, mulberries actually can have three different leaf shapes. As far as site and soil requirements, there are 470 varieties of common figs. Only a handful or less that we can grow here. When I say we can grow here, that we can grow outdoors, which is mainly one that we can grow outdoors and actually get figs on. Figs have very few problems in our climate other than the cold, which kills them to the ground, which most of the time is why we don't get figs on when we have them here. They grow quite fine, but they don't overwinter well enough to have figs. Figs should be grown in well-drained locations with full sun. And figs in Kentucky are more like a small shrub than anything else. The term tree will not apply here. However, in warm climates, they can grow up to 100 feet tall. I have seen figs here anywhere from 10 to maybe 20 feet tall, but that's because we had a few very warm winters in succession. Some site selection and soil requirements for figs. You do need a protected location. That's going to be your best bet. And an absolute must for most cultivars for fruit. The south and west sides of the building is an ideal location. Figs like heat, and that's the most protected side of the building. A reduction in cold damage can also be helped by reducing the amount of direct sunlight plants get early in the morning and late in the evening. So you kind of you don't warm them up quickly, and you don't get them cold quickly that way. Figs do need at least 8 hours of full sun. That's the big thing there. These, as you know, are heat-loving plants, so we've got to give them that during the growing season. Just like all the other plants that I will talk about here, you do need to get a soil test for whatever location. That way we'll know exactly what your soil has in it. Like most fruit crops, figs do prefer a pH of around 6 to 6.5. They can be grown on a wide range of soils, but good drainage is a must. You want to add lots of organic matter as well. If you think about where these grow, these won't grow in warm climates. Most of these warm climates where they're native to have sandy, well-draining soil, so you definitely don't want to put them in a wet location. In Kentucky, the trees should be planted in the spring. You can buy them as potted plants in either dormant or actively growing, depending on the season. Personal preference, I would plant them after May 1st. We're into the 1st of June now, so it's a great time to be planting these. Sometimes you can order bare root plants. If they do come bare root, I would pot those up if you're earlier in the spring, and that way you can bring them indoors if we have a cold spell. But right now, you can buy them at a lot of the big box stores, already growing, actively growing, even maybe with them little figs on them. But now is a great time to plant them if you can find them. Is when you do plant your figs, the soil should not be too wet. You want to dig a large hole, larger than your root ball, obviously. Do not put the fertilizer in the hole, that can burn the roots. You want to put topsoil back in the bottom of the hole as well. You don't want to add extra material outside of what was in that area. So when you add the organic matter, you want to work that into the existing soil and not just put that organic matter around that root ball, because that organic matter will be soft, and that root ball, the outer clay soil around that will be hard, and the roots will just go around in a circle. So work the organic matter in. When you do plant, you want to cut off any broken roots you may have on your plant. If you've got them, if they're potted, you want to kind of rough that outside of that root ball up a little bit to get those roots to growing out. You want to place topsoil in around the roots. Do not bring in good soil to fill the hole. Again, you want to work in whatever organic matter in the entire area and pull all the existing soil back in. Firm your soil around your plant. Water in good to settle the soil around roots, and you're good to go. You will need to prune your fig plants. You want to prune to form a bush after the first season. You want to prune them back 1/3 of the plant, even if it didn't winter kill. This is going to encourage side branching and more fruit. Most of the time we do get some winter kill, at least a few inches, maybe even a foot of the top will die back. You'll prune that out. And generally in warm climates, you would select leaders for future trunks to grow 4 to 8 inches in diameter, but here in Kentucky, that's not going to happen. We're going to have winter damage at least probably 3 out of 5 years at least. And when I say winter damage, I mean it will kill them to the ground. Very little pruning required here. Basically, an annual pruning out of cold damaged wood is about all you're going to need to do. Sucker growth can get thick. That's going to be from the root system. So that may need to be taken care of as well. You don't want to get it too thick, so you may have to take some of those out or trim that back. Late spring is your best time to prune. Right just before bud break or right at bud break. And you do want to make all your cuts back to a bud or branch to allow for quicker cut healing. Also, that bud that you cut back to, make sure it's an outward facing bud. That way you get branches going out and you don't have all that in the middle shading the plant. As far as fertilizing your figs, they grow in poor soil but do prefer richish, loamy, organic matter based soil. So it's not going to hurt to feed these plants. Keep the competition low by mulching around the plants as well. You can also use organic matter such as compost and manure around these plants. They'll really appreciate that. And you should get a couple of feet of growth each year. So keep that in mind. If you fertilize, you should get more than that. I've seen 5, 6, 7 feet of growth on these if they're in a happy location and they're actually given water. So they can grow quite rapidly. If you're going to fertilize new plants, you want to use a fertilizer with an analysis, an equal analysis, saying triple 8 or triple 10 or triple 19, something like that. For feeding your plants 1 to 2 years old, apply about 1 ounce of fertilizer each month from the beginning of growth to the end of July. You don't want to fertilize after the end of July because you don't want sensitive new growth growing out rapidly when we get close to frost time. You'll get a larger dieback of the plant if you fertilize later than the end of July. Apply the fertilizer to large plants 3 times a year. That's just a guideline. Late winter, early June, and mid-July are good times to apply fertilizer. You want to use 1/3 pound per foot of bush height per application. So if the fruit are not reaching maturity and ripening properly, excess fertilizer or drought may be the problem, and fertilization should be reduced. Usually around here, it's drought is what inhibited us. A lot of people had figs last year, and they just weren't ripening, and it was because they weren't watering, because the plants were just in drought stress. Increase the amount of fertilizer as the tree grows, and your final up to 10 pounds per year is what you're going to end up applying. Cultivars for Kentucky fruit mainly in mid to late summer or into fall. You'll probably have green figs on the plant that will get killed in the fall, so don't be discouraged by that. That's going to happen. These plants are warm season plants. Figs fruit from new growth. So if they got killed to the ground, you can still get figs. Unlike a lot of our fruit crops around here that have to have fruit on old wood. These will actually fruit on new wood. So don't be discouraged if the plant does die to the ground. But depending on variety, and I'll talk about what variety you need to make sure you get figs in Kentucky. Crop of figs are produced on new wood. Again, we just mentioned that. First fruiting on old or the previous season growth is probably the poor quality fig. They ripen in the early summer. They're called brebas. They're not as nice a big a fig that you'll get later on new growth, but they're still quite tasty. They're just small. The actual fig fruit is kind of interesting. It is called a multiple fruit, but it's actually an inside-out fruit. No pollination is needed for this plant to have fruit. It produces fruit, which is basically inside out. The flowers are on the inside of the actual fruit. So it has a little ostiole or an eye at the base of that fruit, which is an opening, and that's so insects can go inside there and actually pollinate the flowers which are inside the fruit there. So before you eat your figs, it's a good idea to kind of open that fig up and make sure there's no ants or whatever inside of that fig, because they can get in there and uh, actually start eating the fruit if given the chance. So you're thinking, how do we get figs in Kentucky if it's a warm season crop? The main thing here is variety selection. The variety that you need to grow is Chicago Hardy. Sometimes you'll also see it called Hardy Chicago. But anyway, that's the fig that actually can die to the ground, come back up in the spring, and give you late summer figs. A little background on that variety. It can die to, again, it can die to the ground and still grow and produce a late crop of figs, but other varieties will die down and they'll regrow, but they don't have time to produce figs. This particular variety of fig was found in Chicago. Nobody really knows where it came from or what variety it originates from or where, what country, but this cultivar was selected from one found in Chicago. A few other varieties we can get some figs on in containers, and you can bring them indoors and store them in protected places for winter. Our brown turkey, you can see in the picture there the figs, and then you'll see Celeste is a little bit bigger fig. But again, these will not overwinter outside and produce figs. They will overwinter in the ground. They'll die to the ground, and they'll come up in the spring, but you won't get figs. You're going to have to take these indoors and then take them out if you want to get figs. Here's the foliage types for these types of figs. We have brown turkey on the left there. You can see it's a really cut foliage. And you can see Celeste there is kind of a in between. Um, it's cut, but it's also a little fuller. And then you have Chicago Hardy, which is a fuller leaf. It just gives you an idea of the leaf shapes you may see, but that Chicago Hardy there is the one that you're going to get figs on here in Kentucky on most years, I should say. When to harvest your figs, you want to harvest when the necks wilt and the fruits droop. And you can see that there in that picture, that those figs, when it's plump and ready, it's droopy compared to the green ones. If they exude a milky latex, stop picking. They aren't ready. So if you pick a fig and you see that milky latex come out, then that fig wasn't quite ready yet. So you want to leave the others. The milky latex can cause an allergic reaction in some people. So just keep that in mind if you have that reaction to that latex and you're picking your figs too soon. Don't do that. Wait until they're fully ripe. Little tips on preventing cold injury. You want to select the right cultivar. That's the main thing here in this PowerPoint. You want to plant to the south side of the buildings, south side, west side, southwest, one of those locations. You want to avoid late and over fertilization. You want to mound your soil or mulch over the base of the plant like a hybrid tea rose. That just gives you a few more inches or maybe even a foot of stem growth that's not going to get killed back. So you'll get a little faster regrowth and you're more likely to get more figs that way. So that's another tip. And you want to pull your shoots to the ground secure and covered with mulch. If you live in a colder climate than we have, that's something you could do in with climbing roses like they do in Minnesota, places where they actually cover the entire plant. You could do that, just bend some branches down and cover them. Also, you can plant in 30 to 50 gallon containers and move to a basement or a garage for the winter. You would just keep the temperature lower and not give too much water. Keep it kind of dry and the temperature low. That way you'll have the plant kept into dormancy. Here's some pictures on preventing winter injury. Easy for me to say. Basically, you're going to treat these like hybrid tea roses or some more sensitive climbing roses. So you can see the pictures there where you just pile a bunch of mulch or leaves or soil or even a little bit of branches from some evergreens over the plant. That's going to keep them a little bit warmer. Um, this is not a have-to thing, but this is if you want to make sure you're going to get more figs the following year. This is an easy way to do that. Many of us want to increase the number of fig plants we have, so these are really easy to propagate from cuttings. You want to take your cuttings in early March from older bushes, and then you're going to just stick that piece of branch down into the soil there. Make sure it's not from a branch that's got winter injury or it's a little further down on that stem. So a little more fig propagation in early fall. You want to pull the cane over and bury it in the middle. Leave the tip out, which I mentioned earlier. Rooting will occur at nodes below the ground. You can see that picture there where the soil is actually mounded over a part of that limb, and you're going to leave the other part of the limb out. So anyway, back to that previous slide, and then you'll just wait till spring, and you'll wait till new growth, and you'll see if it's rooted, and then you can cut that off and dig it and move it. A few problems you may see on your figs. Not really much insect or disease problems here in Kentucky, obviously because we're not a native location to figs, nor can we overwinter them quite readily. Fruit splitting is a problem. However, if you keep them evenly watered, you won't get that and fertilized. You can see in that picture there where it was a dry spell and it got a heavy rain or heavy watering. The plant took up too much water and the actual fig fruit split. Ants and flies can enter the ostiole or the opening in the figs, so that's why I suggest you open that fig up before you just pop it in your mouth. Little tiny uh, um, wasps and things can get in there as well, so that's another good reason to open that up. Nobody wants to sting in the mouth. Birds can be a problem if they find these. I've haven't had much trouble yet, but I've heard some people when the birds do find them, they find them quite tasty and they remember what they are. If you do have that problem, then you're going to have to do something like a bird netting or hang some old CDs or maybe a stress call out in the yard or something to stop that. But the bird netting is probably going to be your easiest best bet if the birds are become an issue. Some tips for eating fresh. For eating, you want to pick fresh, fully ripe figs. They're going to have the best flavor. As for preserving, you want to pick a couple of days before fully ripe. This will reduce damage from souring and splitting. If that way, you'll get quite a few. And then for drying, allow fruits to remain on the plant until they're fully ripe. They should fall into your hand when touched. Lower water contact in fruit at this point, and it's going to give you your highest sugar, which is going to give you your best taste whenever you actually dry these. And you can see there, I've left a link there for UC Food Safety at UC Davis in California about some tips on how to dry or how to preserve your figs. So I know that was quick, but most of these videos are pretty quick these days during the COVID-19 epidemic. We're trying to keep these at, in a manageable time frame. In person, I know these are quite a bit longer, but we have open-ended questions then. But if anybody has any questions, they can always post a question to Facebook. You can still call the office. You can call my cell phone. And we still do email these days as well. So, and with that, everyone go out and get some Fig Newtons and enjoy your day. Happy gardening.